All right, everybody, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Be'ezrat Hashem, tonight we will be learning Parashat Chaye Sarah. Baruch Hashem, a lot of wonderful things to talk about. And Shem Hashem Naseh v'Natzliach. I'd like to dedicate tonight's learning for the complete and speedy recovery of Menashe ben Sarah, and also Yaakov Yisrael Avraham ben Chana Esther Helen. May he have a refuah shlema b'toch Shar Cholei Yisrael very quickly. Amen. So tonight we're going to be learning Parashat Chaye Sarah, and there are just an incredible amount of lessons that we can learn from this week's parasha. And I'd like to start off with the beginning. The beginning, of course, talks unfortunately about the passing of Sarah. The passing of Sarah Imenu is something which is very sad. We know the Midrash tells us that when she heard about the terrible news about that the Satan told her, which was not actually true according to most Midrashim, that Avraham Avinu slaughtered Yitzchak. So because of the terrible, frightening message, she dropped dead, and that's how she died. So it's a very sad thing, and she passed away at the age of 127. Now, you'll notice it says that Vayavo Avraham lispod leSarah v'livkota, that Avraham came to eulogize Sarah and to cry over her. Now, the scary thing over here is like this. If you'll notice in the actual Sefer Torah, when it says that Avraham came to cry over Sarah, so it says livkota, to cry over her. There's a small chaf in that word. The word livkota has a small chaf. The question is, what is that small chaf doing there? Why is it written small? So I saw an incredible pshat. One of the Mefarshim says that the livkota, the fact that he cried over her, the crying was minimized. Now, why was the crying minimized? I mean, this was a lifetime partner. Can you only imagine what it means to lose somebody as special as Sarah Imenu? So this commentary explained, I forgot which one it was, but he explained that the idea is the following. We know that Sarah Imenu for a long time couldn't have children. And what she had done was she had suggested that Hagar, her maidservant, marry Avraham. And hopefully they'll have a child, and that will be how Sarah will be built through the child that Avraham will have with Hagar. And when Hagar became pregnant, so it says Vatekal Givirta Beinea, that she started to disrespect Sarah, and she started to say, well, you're with Avraham for so long, and you didn't have a child, and I'm with him, and just automatically I get pregnant. So you see that you're the problem, and I'm not, and I'm better than you. And this is the attitude, even if she may not have said those actual words, but this was the kind of attitude that she was giving over. And being that that's the case, so Sarai was very offended, very upset, and she was very disturbed that Avram didn't put an end to it right away. So what she did was she told Avram, Yishpot Hashem beini uvenecha. And this is a very important lesson for us to remember. She said, may Hashem judge between me and you. Now, the problem here is like this. Even if Avraham was at fault for not doing something about how Hagar mistreated her master Sarah, but at the same time, when you bring Hashem to judge a case, when you ask Hashem to judge somebody for his actions, for his wrongdoings, and you say, Hashem, open up this guy's file and look at what he did wrong. Look at the suffering that he has caused me. So when that's the attitude that you want Hashem to take, then Hashem says, sure, no problem. I will open up his file, but on one condition, that I open up your file as well. Now, we don't ever want Hashem to open up our file. We don't ever want Hashem to look and to see things that we've done in the past. We don't want to be scrutinized, because it says that nobody can withstand pure judgment from Hashem, not even the Avot HaKadoshim. So Avraham over here understood that part of what happened over here to Sarah, the reason that the Samech Mem had permission to cause Sarah's death by giving her this frightening, startling news that caused her to just die on the spot, was because of the fact that she had requested that there be judgment between herself and him. And that's why the chaf was small, because he understood that his crying for her was somewhat minimized because he had an understanding of why this took place, which is really a scary lesson. So instead of asking, the lesson we take from here is that instead of asking for Hashem to judge people and to repay the terrible things that they've done to others, and to say, hey, Hashem, caused them suffering like they caused me suffering, etc. So our job is to request that Hashem has mercy on them, to ask for Hashem's mercy. Think about Moshe Rabbeinu. How many times did he suffer for Klal Yisrael? How many times did he have to put up with terrible nonsense and complaints and all kinds of things? But never did he say, Hashem, okay, that's it, wipe them out and make a new nation out of me. I'm done with this whole thing. Rather, he always protected Klal Yisrael, always prayed for the mercy of Klal Yisrael, even though they had done things that were not okay. I think that's just an important point to bring out. Now, you have to continue on to the sale of Ephron, and the sale of Me'arat HaMachpelah from Ephron HaChiti. This, Chazal, according to some opinions, is actually the final test of Abraham. Imagine a person after so long, they go ahead and they have to deal with now somebody who's giving them a hard time with a purchase of a burial plot. So this was a challenge for Abraham, that he had to go through this and not get upset and not get angry, but simply go through the motions of dealing with this person, and at the same time just being worried about burying his wife, but doing so with grace and with style and with all the wonderful things that Abraham was able to do it with. So he goes ahead and he has this dealing with Ephron HaChiti. And Ephron that day became a very special person in the eyes of his community, because Abraham needed him for something, and that made him into a very special person, Rashi tells us. And what he does is he starts saying, listen, you want my cave with this, you want this burial land? No problem, I'll give it to you. You are a very special person, and I will be happy to give it to you. And the conversation goes, Abraham says, no, I want to buy it from you. And he repeats, no, I want to give it to you. And it goes back and forth. And eventually the statement comes out from Ephron's mouth that he says, listen, Abraham, a land that's worth 400 shekel kesef, 400 silver coins, between me and you, what is it? Just take the land. Forget about the money. So it says Abraham heard the number, right? Abraham hears 400 shekel kesef, right? So he hears that number coming out of Ephron's mouth, and he immediately goes and he takes 400 shekel kesef and he gives it over to Ephron. Ephron then proceeds to take the money, and the sale is done. Now, over here, Chazal point out something very interesting. Chazal point out that Ephron was somebody who said a lot, made a big hullabaloo about giving over the land to Abraham, and at the end of the day, he did not give it as a gift. He did not give it as a charity. He did not do, it wasn't a good deal. It was just a sale, a plain old ordinary sale. He said a lot and did very little. Now, over here, the Balaturim points out something very interesting. And that is that throughout the entire discussion of Avraham and Ephron, Ephron was called Ephron Ayin Pei Reish Vav Nun. That's how you spell the word Ephron, the name Ephron. Now, when he takes the money from Avraham, at that point, the Torah then proceeds to call him Ephron Ayin Pei Reish Nun, and it omits the Vav. Why does it omit the Vav? So over here, the Balaturim explains the reason. The reason is because when Ephron was positioned in this moment to take money from Avraham, especially a nice amount of money, and he wanted that money, and he was playing it as if he doesn't want it and as if he wants to give a gift, but really, really, he wanted Avraham's money. He desired that money. So over here, the Torah is going out of its way to tell us that Ephron really desired the money of Avraham. He was jealous. He wanted that. Although he pretended not, but he wanted it. And that is why the Vav is omitted, because now take a look at this. Ayin is 70. Pei is 80. So that's 150. Reish is 200. So that's 250. Without the Vav, we go to Nun, which is 50. So that's now a total of 400. Okay? We've got 400. Ephron. You have 150 plus 200 is 350 plus another Nun is 50. So the 350 plus 50 is 400. Says the Baal HaTurim. What is also 400 in Gematria? The word Ra'ayin. Ra'ayin means evil eye. Somebody who has an evil eye. Evil eye means the person is jealous. He sees something that someone else has and he wants it. He sees the guy has a nice car, he wants that car. He sees the person has a lot of money, he wants the money. This is called Ra'ayin. Why was it that the payment had to be 400 shekel kesef? Because again, this was to combat the Ra'ayin of this man who was standing in front of Avram. The 400 shekel was because he had to do something to get rid of the 400 Ra'ayin of this man Ephron. Now the Kli Yakar takes it one step further. And the Kli Yakar on this pasuk points out that this is what the Baal HaTurim has to say. And he says, now let's take it a step further. You'll see that not only with Avraham was there an issue of 400, but rather with another 3 individuals in the Tanakh, we find the concept of 400 in order to fight off the evil eye, Ra'ayin, the jealousy of other people. And that points out the Kli Yakar. First of all, we have it by the brothers of Yosef. We had it here with Ephron. We have it by the brothers of Yosef. It says that the brothers of Yosef were very jealous of Yosef. He was the favorite child of Yaakov, and they were jealous of the fact that he had received special treatment. He had the ketonet pasim, and he learned with his father, and it was something that they didn't like, that he got a special cloak with beautiful colors from his father. They weren't happy about that. They were very jealous about that. So what happened is that they sold him. They sold him as a slave. He went down to Egypt. And the whole story of how the brothers had to go down to Egypt and how eventually the families came down to Egypt and lived there, that whole thing took place. And what was the decree? How much time were they supposed to be there for? 400 years. Turns out that Hashem ended up making the Jewish people only be there for 210 because they did the work and the slavery of 400. It was such a devastating type of slavery that they managed to do 400 years of labor in only 210, but it was a decree of 400. So why 400? Again, to combat the Ra'ayin, the evil eye of the brothers. Amazing. Says the Kli Yakar, it's not over. We have another case like that, and that is with Esav. We know that Yaakov Avinu was blessed by his father Yitzchak before Yitzchak passed away, and Yitzchak gave a wonderful blessing to Yaakov that he will have mital hashamayim umishmanei haaretz v'rov dagan v'tirosh. He'll have from the dew of heaven, from the fats of the land. He'll have grains and oil and wine, everything that he will need. And Esav, who had heard about Yaakov's success when he was in the home of Lavan, he was very jealous of Yaakov and of the blessings that he had received from his father, that he had taken from his father trickily. And he wanted to get from that. He was jealous of that. So it says, how many men did Esav come to attack Yaakov with? 400. Again, same number, 400. Again, representing Ra'ayin. The power of Esav is rooted in his jealousy, his desire for what others have. So what did Yaakov do to fight that? What he did was that he first of all, he sent him gifts. He sent him gifts, says, listen, all that I have, this is nothing for me. I'm sending you gifts. And it says, V'revach tasimu ben eder le'eder. Place a distance between one group of gifts that I'm sending and another, so that by the time he sees the first one, he says, wow, all of this is for me. And then the second one, wow, this is also for me. And then the third one, wow, this is also for me. So he's going to be seeing more and more and more coming to him. So his eyes will start to get satisfied. It's, wow, this and this and that. By the time Yaakov and his family reaches by the time they reach Esav will already have his desire, so to say, satisfied. But that was the root cause of the problem, that Esav was jealous of everything that Yaakov had as a result of the blessings that he had received from his father. One more case, says the Kli Yakar, we find the same idea. The number 400 associated with Ra'ayin, which is in Gematria 400, is the case of David Hamelech and Naval. It says that there was a man by the name of Naval, that David Hamelech had helped his servant, the servants of Naval, when they were in need. He took care of them, he protected them. And then David Hamelech was in hiding, and he needed help from Naval, and he sent his messengers to ask for Naval for some help. And Naval said, who am I? I'm going to give you something. Why would I give you anything? I don't know you guys. I don't know your people. I have nothing to do with you, etc., etc. And David Hamelech was so upset because Naval had basically betrayed him at his time of need. He was meshalem ra'at tachat tova. He, instead of repaying the debt that he owed King David, he said, I don't know him. I have nothing to do with his people. And he didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to help him out. So David Hamelech came after Naval with approximately 400 men, the Navi says. So says the Kli Yakar, again, why 400? Because Naval was cheap. He wanted what everybody else had, but didn't want to give anything. So that's, again, the quality of Ra'ayin. So David Hamelech had to go fight it off with 400 men. Now, at the same time, it says Abigail, the wife of Naval, went and she asked David to spare her husband, etc. It didn't end up killing him. But the point was that it was indeed the same concept that we find again and again and again. But this was who Ephron was. That's why he lost the Vav. Now, says the Kli Yakar, what's the idea over here? Why is the letter Vav now missing from the word Ephron? It could have been, okay, it's just the Gematria is 400, but says the Kli Yakar, no, it's much more significant than that. Because Chazal tell us in Masechet Bava Batra that when a person gives tzedakah, when a person gives charity, it says that automatically, at that very moment, he is blessed with 6 blessings from Shemayim. He's blessed with 6 blessings from heaven, on the spot. It says even more than that. It says that somebody who then is mefaiso bidvarim, somebody who says good words, encouraging words to the person who he's giving charity to, that person will then receive an additional 13 blessings. It's a huge, huge mitzvah to make the guy feel good. But at any rate, the point was that in this case, there was nothing. So he could have used his field as an opportunity to give to someone else and receive 6 blessings from heaven, but he refrains from doing so, and therefore the Vav, which is in Gematria 6, was removed from his name. That's why Ephron, after he received the money, which of course was 400 shekel, was missing a Vav from his name, which is really quite amazing. Now, contrary to these characters, I shouldn't say characters, they're real people, but my point is that to the figures that we're speaking about in the Tanakh that we're learning right now, contrary to these types of personalities, we find over here something very different. The Torah does not waste any time in telling you, after all of this, Ve'Avraham zaken ba bayamim va'Adonai berach et Avraham bakol. It says Avraham was old at this point, ba bayamim. He already went through the stage. The Mefarshim say over here, there's a difference between earlier in the Torah when it says bayim bayamim, that Avraham v'Sarah zekinim bayim bayamim, versus over here where it says Avraham zaken ba bayamim. The Avraham v'Sarah zekenim ba'im bayamim, which means that Avraham and Sarah were old. Ba'im bayamim, they were now reaching the stage of being old, right? That was in the beginning. Now over here, the Mefarshim say the Avraham zaken ba bayamim means that Avraham already is old. He already went through the stage of being old. He's like really, really, really at the end of his life over here. And at this point, the Torah tells us, V'Adonai berach et Avraham bakol. Hashem blessed Avraham with everything. Everything. The Ramban tries to just point out, what does it mean, everything? What does it mean Hashem gave Avraham everything? It means Hashem gave Avraham wealth. It means Hashem gave Avraham assets. Hashem gave Avraham honor. Hashem gave Avraham long life. Hashem gave Avraham children. Says the Ramban, this is every man's dream. Hashem gave Avraham everything, bakol, everything any person could ever want in his lifetime. Hashem gave it to Avraham. He lacked nothing. He reached the top, as they say. So over here at this point, we have now a very important question to ask. How did he get there? How did he get to the top? How does someone reach that point? And over here comes along the Dad Zekenim Ba'alei HaTosafot, and they say the answer is embedded in the word itself, in the pasuk itself. It says over here, V'Avram Zaken Ba Ba'amim, and Avraham was old; he was already coming along in days. V'Hashem berachet Avraham, Hashem blessed Avraham ba kol, with everything. Says the Dad Zekenim. The answer is in the word bakol, with everything. Why? Because if you remember, when we learned previously that there was a war between the 4 kings and the 5 kings, and Avraham went to go save his nephew Lot from the hands of the 4 kings who took over Sodom and all the people of Sodom, and Avraham fought them all off. And then Avraham was in the city of Shalem, and Malkitzedek, the king of Shalem, who was a Kohen Lekel Elyon, he was a priest to Hashem, the God Most High, as it says over there, and he took out bread and wine, and he was celebrating with Avraham's victory. And it says over there that Vayiten lo ma'aser mikol, that at that moment, since Malkitzedek was a Kohen, Avraham had whatever finances he had, Avraham proceeded to give Malkitzedek 10% of everything. So we find already from the time of Avraham the concept of ma'aser, of separating 10% and giving it over to the people who are serving Hashem. Says the Dad Zekenim, bizchut hafrashat ma'aser, the reason that Avraham reached all that he had reached, all of his material possessions and his accomplishments in his life, his wealth, his assets, his honor, his long life, his children, everything that he had was bizchut hafrashat ma'aser, was because of the fact that when he had the opportunity to give ma'aser to Malkitzedek, he took that opportunity and he gave 10%. Amazing. Person doesn't realize what he's doing for himself when he gives the 10%. He thinks, oh, I'm doing them a favor. Little does he know that he's gaining for himself so much. Like we said, Abraham had everything. Money you can't even imagine. Wealth you can't imagine. Assets you can't even fathom what this man had. Everything you could ask for. Why? Says the Dad Zekenim, he gave ma'aser. He gave his 10%. And it's so important for us to understand that. Abotai, this is such an important lesson for us, because what it's teaching us is that there are 2 types really of people. Everybody in life at some point needs to take from people, and they also need to give to people. But the question is, primarily speaking, where do we want to see ourselves most of the time? Do we want to see ourselves taking, or do we want to see ourselves giving? Says the Dad Zekenim over here, if you're smart and you want to reach the top, then be a giver. That will help you reach the top. Because the people that we mentioned before, the people like Ephron, that they wanted to take, then okay, they got, let's say, their 400 shekel kesef, but that's it. That's all we know about the guy. The rest is history, nothing. Esav wanted this, wanted that, etc. He got what he wanted. That was it. It's over. No more greatness for Esav. You have this guy Naval that King David asked for a little bit of help, food, bread, and clothing for his men. The guy wouldn't give him anything. Where is he? Nothing. We don't hear about him. We don't know about him. Nobody knows about him. Nothing. You had the brothers of Yaakov Avinu, that not the brothers of Yosef, that they were jealous. Where did it lead? Where did it take them? 400 years of slavery. Abotai, when you're jealous of somebody else and you want to take from them, it doesn't take you to a good place. You might get what you're looking for, but the problem is that you're thinking that this guy has it and I need to get it from him, but your address is the wrong address. You're talking to the wrong person. You need to focus your energy on Hashem and ask from Hashem to give you, because he's the one that really has it to give it to either him or to you. And Hashem chooses to give it to the people who have their hands open. That's the key. Hashem chooses to give it, like it says to Avraham Avinu, because his hands were open. He wanted to give it to Malki Tzedek. He had an opportunity to serve guests. He served guests. He had an opportunity to bring people over to feed them. He feeds them. He had an opportunity to give Maaser. He gives Maaser. Avraham is the master of Chesed, and therefore he is the one who is going to be on top. That's the lesson over here. The people that want to give, that ask themselves, how can I give instead of how can I take? Those are the people that find themselves on top. That's why Avraham Avinu over here was Vashem berach et Avraham bakol. Hands are open. Abotai, when a person opens his hands, when a person becomes a pipeline of blessing from Shamayim, Hashem knows this guy, he's not closing off the pipe. His hands are open. He gives to other people. He's a channel for blessing for everybody else around him. So therefore, it's worth it to pour everything through this guy's pipe, because I know it's going to reach the right destination, as opposed to somebody else who's sealed. His hands are sealed. So then Hashem says, how can I pour the bracha down through this guy's pipe? It's not going to get to its destination. It's sealed. It's closed off. So a person who becomes a channel of blessing for everybody around him who needs, and for the people that need whatever it is that they may need, that person will know for a fact that Hashem will send it down through his pipe. It'll come through. He will be the source of the blessing, because Hashem knows that it's going to reach the right destination. It's not me, Rabotai. It's the Dad Zekinim in this week's parasha. How did Hashem have? How did Avraham get everything? Bizchut hafrashat maaser, because he gave maaser, and it wasn't just maaser, Rabotai. It was everything else that he did too. It was all the chesed that he did. It was all the kindness that he had shown everybody for so many years. Constantly giving. The man was on his third day after Brit Milah, the most painful day, and he was so old, and he's looking to give to others, to find guests. That's the kind of person that Hashem blesses. And so too when it came to Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu also, we said he was, had to deal with Esav. But what was the difference between Esav and Yaakov? Esav says, Yesh li Rav, I've got plenty. I don't need your gifts, Yaakov. Yaakov responds, no, take them, because Yesh li kol, I've got everything. Because our attitude is supposed to be that whatever Hashem gives us, for us, as far as we're concerned, that's everything. And therefore, since we have everything, it doesn't mean that I can't give you. I could give you and I can spread it as much as I can, because of the fact that I have full faith that if I do the right thing with what Hashem gives me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will continue to give me and do so even much more than what I already have. That's our belief, Rabotai. And that's why it's so important to be a giver. I want to share with you a couple of amazing stories. The first one deals with actually a couple of stories about Rav Moshe Feinstein, his son, Rav David, and also I recently heard a story about his great-grandson. I want to share it with you. All amazing, just to show you what it means to be a family of givers. Rav Moshe Feinstein was incredible. Can you imagine this man who was so busy? The world stood on this man's shoulders. All the greatest questions, most complicated halachic questions would come to him, and he was answering them, and he was the most incredible and most capable rabbi that we had here in America. It was unbelievable. He was really the posek kado. And Rav Moshe Feinstein, can you imagine, on Erev Pesach, every rabbi of a shul on Erev Pesach gets so many phone calls because people want to know, does this have chametz? Does that have chametz? And they're constantly asking about chametz and all these different things, especially the day before Pesach. Every rabbi's phone is like ringing all day long. Rav Moshe Feinstein, if you can imagine, was by far more involved than anybody else and knew much more than everybody else. So can you imagine what his phone was like on Erev Pesach? And Rav Moshe Feinstein used to get a phone call on Erev Pesach from a woman who called about some heart medication that she had to take. And she wanted to know, does this medication have chametz or not? And the rabbi would answer, no, it's not a problem, you could have it. So she called one Erev Pesach. And then she called the next year of Pesach just to make sure. And then she called the next Erev Pesach. And every year on Erev Pesach, it was the same phone call. And this was going on for about 20 years. I think actually 19 years. And you can imagine, if Moshe Feinstein is a busy person and he's got lots of calls to answer, and he already answered this question already for 19 years in a row. But look at this, amazing. The 20th year, he doesn't hear from this woman on Erev Pesach. And again, this is a man that has a lot going on in his life. He doesn't hear from her on Erev Pesach. And that's because this woman was a little bit sick. She wasn't feeling well. And all of a sudden, in her home, the phone rings. And on the other line is Rav Moshe Feinstein himself calling this lady. And he said to her, I didn't hear from you this year. So I was wondering if everything's okay. Amazing. And he says, and by the way, I want you to know that the medication is perfectly fine to take, and you can have it on Pesach. It's fine. So here he is, a man who has so much to do, that the greatest questions that ever faced the Jewish people in the modern world are coming to him. Can you do an abortion? Can you not do an abortion? Can you pull the plug? Can you not pull the plug? What's considered dead? What's not considered brain dead? Can't breathe? The most heavy-duty questions. And he's still thinking that he should be hearing from a woman on Erev Pesach about her heart medication. This is an attitude of giving. This is called, I'm giving to you. I want to make sure that you're okay. I'm trying to make sure that you have what you need. You usually need an answer about your medication. If you don't get it, then I will give it to you. I will provide it to you. Amazing. It's an attitude of giving. They asked recently, this was a couple of years back, Reb David Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. They asked the son of Rav Moshe Feinstein, who himself was a gadol in his own right. He passed away this year. They asked him in an interview in a magazine. They asked 50 different people this question: if you could bring three people to your home, three people from the last 1,000 years to your home for a Shabbat meal, who would it be? And many different people said different things. A couple of people said the Rambam, a couple of people said Rashi, many different people said different answers. They got to Reb David Feinstein and they asked him this question. And Reb David Feinstein's response was, I would take the three hungriest people from the last 1,000 years and bring them to my Shabbat table. So it's amazing. We're all thinking, who could I have an opportunity with? Any three people. It could be, so many different options that I would like to have at my table. But that's a taking attitude. The attitude of a gadol is a giving attitude. Who would be the most benefiting from being at my Shabbat table in the last 1,000 years? At which people from the last 1,000 years would benefit the most? And the answer is the three hungriest people. Amazing. That's the attitude of a gadol. So I heard a story not too long ago about the great-grandson of Moshe Feinstein. This was the story that took place recently. And what happened was that this boy and his mother were going shopping for clothing. And there were different, options on the shelves, different things. And the mother sees that this boy brings back shirts that don't fit him, pants that are not his size, and things that he would never even wear. And the mother says, maybe you're a little confused, but this is not your size, and you don't like these things. Why would you bring these? Maybe go get something that, change it. You didn't realize it's not your size. So he said to her, no, Mom, actually, I know that it's not my size. So she said, well, then why are you bringing it? I need to go shopping for you. So he said to her, look, I understand that I need new clothes myself, but I figure that, there are other kids that I know at school that actually need new clothing too. And they've been coming in with torn clothing for a very long time. And I want you, instead of buying it for me, I actually asked my principal to find out what their sizes were. And that way you could buy it for them instead. Amazing. This is an unbelievable young man that is trying to help out his fellow. He took notice that there are a couple of kids in his class that their clothing is already long gone. It's done and it needs to be replaced. And he knows maybe his mother, or I don't know who it was exactly, that could not buy for the whole world. So he says, you know what, instead of buying for me, why don't you buy for them? That's an attitude of giving. That's a family. You see that in the family it runs the idea of giving to other people, of trying to. That's the problem. When a person is a ra'ayin, when he doesn't want to give, he wants to constantly take. He's looking to always take. So then he doesn't get the bracha, because there's no channel that Hashem could send it through that will go to everywhere else. He's always looking to take. But when somebody wants to give, he's a family of giving. It runs in the family. That will be a family that the bracha goes through them, because they are constantly looking to give. It's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of work. And that's why Avraham got that incredible bracha. I'll share with you just one more story that I heard from Rabbi Pesach Kron. Beautiful story. He says that there is a group of women in the 5 towns that they send clothing to people in Israel that could use clothing, that they don't have the means to purchase nice clothing for their children I think it's specifically for children. And what he said was that these ladies decided that if we're sending to the children, then might as well send to the parents as well, because if the parents don't have money for the kids' clothing, they probably don't even have money for their own clothing. And this one particular woman sent in a beautiful dress together with the other clothing. And then she said to herself, if they don't have money for clothing, then they probably don't have money for other things that they need as well. So she pinned to the dress that she had put in a beautiful envelope full of cash, and she wrote a little letter to the recipient. And the truth of the matter was that the way that it works over there was that the people who receive these packages, they come and they take it. And it just so happened that a woman that needed this package actually had a Sheva Barachot that night that she needed some kind of dress for, and she was saying to herself, I'm not going to go. And she opens up this package, and there, sure enough, is a dress that fits her perfectly. It looks great on her. And she, because of that, goes to the Sheva Barachot, and as she's putting it on, she feels this little envelope pinned to her dress, and it's got cash, and they had plenty of debt they needed to pay off, and it paid off beautifully. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of thinking about other people. What do they need? How can I help them? How can I do for them? It's a lifetime of thinking like that. When somebody leads an entire life like that, that's when you get a pasuk like Avraham Zaken Baba Yamim V'Hashem Berachet Avraham Bakol. Then Hashem blessed Avraham in everything that he needed. Why? Because he's constantly looking to think. That's because he's doing that. That's why he gets the wealth, the assets, the honor, the children, everything you need. Why? Because he's a channel of blessing. That's what the Dad Zekenim is teaching us. All of this was bizchut hafrashat maaser, because he gave maaser. The one mitzvah that a person has every right to test Hashem, as it says in Malachi, bechanuni na bezot. Hashem says, test me. You'll see if I will not open up the windows of heaven and shower you, I will shower you with endless, infinite blessing. So important for us to understand that. And Baruch Hashem, that's part of who we are. Now, continuing the parasha, the story of Eliezer and Rivka is unbelievable. Avraham sends his servant to go to find a marriage partner for his son Yitzchak. Yitzchak, being that he was like a sacrifice, was not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael because of the fact that he was basically lifted up on an altar. He was not allowed to leave the land of Israel. So Avraham wasn't interested in having a daughter-in-law from the locals, from the people nearby, because they did not have these qualities that we're talking about. They didn't have these important qualities of chesed and kindness and the things that we need in Klal Yisrael. So he decided to send his servant back to his own family to get a bride for Yitzchak. Now, when Eliezer and Rivka meet, it's really something quite amazing. The Shalah HaKadosh points out something very interesting. It says over there that Rivka is coming to draw water out from the well for her camp for her sheep, and Eliezer, the servant, approaches Rivka, and he tells her, "Listen, let me drink some of the water," and she says, "Sure." And she says also, "I will give your camels to drink as well." Now, the problem over here is like this. Says the Shalah Kadosh, an amazing thing. He says, look at how Rivka conducted herself over here. When Eliezer drank from the water that Rivka offered, so it says that there was some water left over from what he drank inside of the bucket, inside of the jug. Now Rivka doesn't know what to do. If she gives this leftover water to the camel, says the Shalah Kadosh, so it will look like she's giving over this guy's water to an animal, so he's like an animal. So it'll make the guy feel bad. So that's not an option. If she spills the rest of the water out, so then well, that's also not respectful. Why? To make it look like whatever he drank from, I'm not going to use the rest of that, so I'm just going to spill it out because that stuff is garbage. That's also not appropriate. So look what she did. It says nitchakma. So she did something very wise. She ran to the well. Now, as she's running, because of the thrust of the running, she made it as if the jug fell out of her hands and it fell over and all the water spilled out. Then she had to go and refill it. So Eliezer stayed with his honor. So it's amazing. Look at how careful this young woman was with the respect of some random stranger. She didn't want to make him feel bad. So if she goes and she gives his leftover water to the animal, she's basically saying you're like an animal. If she goes and she spills it out, she's saying I'm not going to use your stuff because who knows who you are. Maybe you're filthy. So is that respectful to that guy? No. So she does something that makes it look like she spilled it all out by accident, and that way he stays with his honor. Wow, that's an amazing thing. Such insight from such a young woman. But the idea is that look at how careful she was with the feelings of this random person. How much more so we have to learn from her to have care and not to, God forbid, embarrass somebody. Many times we do things, we say things without thinking and without realizing that's an embarrassing statement to so-and-so. That's not a good thing to do. There's so much that we can learn here from every sentence that is brought down. I'll share with you one more point of the interaction. Eliezer shows up to the house, and she brings Eliezer over to the house of Betuel and Lavan, and they offer him to eat. They say, Eliezer, you just came from a long trip. It was a very long journey. It should have been around 2 weeks long, maybe 17 days, and it ended up being 3 hours. Amazing. He had a kfitzat haderech. They said, listen, you came from far away, so why don't you come and eat something now? Rashi tells us that this was a plot to kill him. They wanted to kill him because they were able to then take everything that he brought and say, we don't know what happened to him. We don't have any knowledge of that, etc. And that would be the end of it. They take the money and they keep their daughter too. So they poison the food. And it says, Eliezer says, no, I'm not eating. Ad Asher, right? Until I speak the words that I'm supposed to speak. That's a huge lesson for us as well. Because what happened then is that as a result of that, there was an opportunity for the malach to switch the plate. And Betuel thought that Eliezer's plate of food had the poison. Meanwhile, it was his own plate of food that had the poison, and he ate it and he died. That's why it says that when she agreed to leave, so it says that everyone said, listen, let her stay a few days. Why do you need to stay a few days? Isn't she ready to go? Yeah, but we're sitting Shiva now. Who are you sitting Shiva for? Sitting Shiva for Betuel, the father that passed away because he was poisoned by the food that he tried to give Eliezer. So that's why they wanted her to stay, to wait for the end of the Shiva. And she said, you know what, I'll go. And she didn't wait for that either. Now, but the point is, Rabotai, how often do we procrastinate? Do we lose focus of our mission? And we say, you know what? I came here to do X, Y, and Z, but instead of doing that right now, why don't I do something else? Why don't I get involved in something else? Why don't I, they're offering me to do this. Yeah, I'll do that first. I'll hang out a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and do what I have to do. It's such a wrong attitude. Look, this person, Eliezer, decided to be goal-oriented, to be focused on what he had to do, and then he executed it. And by doing so, he saved his life. And not only did he save his life, but it was something that brought about the downfall of his enemy, which is a very important thing for us to take note of as well. And there's endless amounts of things that we can talk about over here, but I want to just point out one more thing from the beginning of the parasha as well. Let's go back to the discussion between Avraham and Ephron. Every word that is mentioned in the pasuk is so important. And the way that Avraham conducts himself, again, is super important. Avraham says to the people of Chet, he says, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. He says, Ger v'toshav, I am a proselyte and a resident with you. Now, that makes it sound like Avraham is saying, I'm a foreigner. Maybe I am a legal alien, but I'm not somebody from here. Now, meanwhile, Avraham Avinu is very much from here. Avraham is somebody who lives here. This is his land now. He lives in this place. He's not a foreigner. He is from here. So why does Avraham, when he deals with everybody, he says, Ger v'toshav, I am a proselyte, I'm a foreigner, and I'm a resident over here, like as if, you're not from here. You belong here. This is where you're from. That is a big question that the Shalach Kadosh addresses as well. And the Shalach Kadosh explains that, as a matter of fact, it's not only Avraham who said that, but it's Yitzchak Avinu, and it's also Yaakov Avinu, and it's also David Hamelech. We find that by all of them, the language of ger was used. Ger means to live. Lagur means to live. But lagur also comes from the word ger, which means it's the same root as ger, which means to be a proselyte, to be somebody from far away, somebody not from here, not one of us, somebody from a distant land. So why? What's the idea behind that? Again, by Yitzchak Avinu we find it where Hashem tells him, Gur ba'aretz hazot, live in this land. But again, the word gur means that you're like not really going to be here, but you're from somewhere else, you belong somewhere else, but you're here now. When it comes to Yaakov Avinu also, it says, Yaakov Avinu called his life Shnei Megurai, the years that I was living, and again, the root being ger, that I'm not from here, I don't belong here, but I'm just here, either temporarily or I'm from somewhere else. David HaMelech also said the same thing, Ger anochi ba'aretz, I am a foreigner in this land. And he's not a foreigner, he's the king. So the Shalach Kadosh over here also asks, why do we find this term constantly being used by our forefathers? Like I'm telling you, every single sentence that we see over here in the parasha, there's a lesson there. You can extrapolate so many lessons. If you look in the Me'am Loez, he's got pages and pages on the discussion of Eliezer and Betuel Lavan. It's really worth reading it if you have a chance. So why is it that the word ger is used again and again and again by Abraham, by Yitzchak, by Yaakov, by David HaMelech? And says the Shalach Kadosh, the idea is very simple. They're telling you how we are supposed to lead our lives. Says the Shalach Kadosh, Al ken yihyeh lezikaron ben enechem tamid hagerut ba'aretz. this was specifically the word that was chosen, so that for all of us who read this many years later, that we should remember that our living here in this world is just temporary. If Abraham, who is the one that the land of Israel was promised to, who is very much related to the land of Israel, says about himself that he's a ger, that he's a foreigner, this is not really his land, then there's a message behind it. And that message is that we are, all of us, foreigners to this land, to this earth. We're foreigners because this is not our ultimate place. Our place, our goal is Olam Haba, is the world to come. Says the Shara Kadosh, and therefore shelo lihitasek beinyan hashayach lekviyat dira ba'aretz hazu. It's our job not to focus our efforts on establishing a place for ourselves here. Ki b'mador ha'elyon sham beito, says the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, says the Shara Kadosh, because in the upper worlds, that's his real home. Here he's just a foreigner. Here he's just a proselyte. Here he's somebody that he doesn't belong here. He's here, but he's not really from here. He's from a much higher place. And that's, again, who our forefathers were. They understood that their lives over here, their material possessions over here, whatever wealth and assets they've accumulated over here, none of it is worth anything unless it's for the purposes of Torah and Mitzvot, because ultimately Torah and Mitzvot is what's going to get us to our real destination, which is Olam Haba. It's a life that revolves around Olam Haba. And that's really why our forefathers were able so easily to always give and to always give to others, because they understood that monetary possessions and all that, that's meaningless. It's got no value to it. It's got zero value to it unless you're doing good with it, unless you're helping others with it, unless you're doing positive with it. Doesn't mean that a person needs to be poor. Think about Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the author of all the 6 orders of the Mishnah, that it says about him that he was as wealthy as the Roman Emperor Antoninus, and both of them were so wealthy that lo paska me'al shulchanam tznon v'chazeret kol hashana. They had radishes and they had lettuce all year long throughout all the seasons. That's how wealthy they were. They were able to import the finest of the fine things. So Rebbe was so super duper wealthy. Then when he passed away, says the Gemara Masechet Ketubot Daf Kuf Daled, before he passed away, he lifted up his 10 fingers to Shamayim and he said, Hashem, it's known before you that I haven't enjoyed this world even like my little pinky. No enjoyment from this world, because he didn't put time and effort into this world as far as deriving pleasure from this world is concerned. That wasn't something that concerned him. He was concerned with Torah, with mitzvot, with what's really important. That's the important message over here. They say that there was once a gvir, a great wealthy individual that came from America to visit the Chafetz Chaim, in Radin in his home. And when he arrived, he had a big horse and buggy carrying all kinds of things, and he wanted to help support the Chafetz Chaim. And he came to the house of the Chafetz Chaim, and he sees that there's very little there. There's no chandelier. There's not much furniture. Just a table and a place to sit, and that's basically it. And he says to the Chafetz Chaim, "Where's your big chandelier? Where's your furniture? Where's all the wonderful things that you're supposed to have in your home?" And the Chavetz Chaim said, "Well, let me ask you a question. You are here right now, so where's your chandelier? Where's your furniture?" So the man said, "Rabbi, there's a big difference. Here, I'm coming to your home. This is where you always live, right? But me, I'm just a guest over here. I'm just somebody who's coming here. I'm here one day, I'm gone the next, then I go back home." So the Chavetz Chaim said, "Did you hear what you just said? That's exactly what it is. All of us here, we're just guests. We come here and we leave. Why should I invest so much time in things that are not meaningful? I have to spend my time on Torah, mitzvot, writing holy books. I have to spend time where it's really important. I'm just a guest here. I'm not here permanently. I'm here for 120 years and then I'm out." So that's what the Chafetz Chaim taught all of us, that our job is to focus on what really matters. And each person on his own level. Nobody should jump the gun. Nobody should try and do something that is beyond his capability. But every person on his own level has to ask himself, maybe there's a little bit more time that I can give for Torah and mitzvot as opposed to focusing it on other material pursuits. Maybe there is some more time. If it might be 10, 15, 20 minutes that you can focus on more learning instead of focusing on making another dollar. Everybody on his own level, to each whatever it is that he can do. But the concept is exactly that. Like Avraham Avinu said, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem. I'm a ger. I'm not from here. I'm a Jew that is from a different place. I have a neshama that comes from a very lofty place. Right here, I'm just a ger. I'm just here for a temporary time. This is not my real place. Like the Shalach Kadosh told us, Ki b'mador ha'elyon, because in the upper levels, Sham Beto, that's where his house is. That's where he really belongs. So our job is to make sure that we focus our energy towards building that house, towards making sure that that house is okay. And that's what we're learning from our forefathers, how to do that. And that's really part of the message tonight, to learn to be a giver and not to try and be jealous of people, to be a taker, but to be rather sameach, smechim b'chelkenu, happy with what we have, and to use it to the best of our abilities to give to others and to make sure that they have what they need. And that way, B'ezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make us all tzinorot shel shefa, pipes that flow abundance of heavenly blessings min hashamayim. B'ezrat Hashem, we should all have that zechut to be like our forefathers, and we could really say, Matai yagiu ma'asai le'maasei avotai, when will my deeds reach their deeds? Which it may never be, but we can always strive. We can always try to do as much as we can to be as similar as possible to them. B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to stop over here tonight. Bli Neder will continue next week with next week's Parashat Toldot. Wishing you all a good night.